thank you everybody for scheduling this time during the holidays, and just really appreciate you being here. And we're going to hit on kind of a 30,000 foot view today on 5 steps for passive income. So as recognizing that everybody's in a different place and a different journey, the objective today is really for you just to grab one thing that you can apply from this conversation today. And hopefully that'll jump in and allow you to do something in your own perspective around passive income and what that looks like for you. So Joe is my co-host today. He's going to help direct and guide us through this conversation in the chat room. So what we're going to do is we're going to just hit these things, and then Joe will engage in the chat room, and we'll move the conversation through that way.
And Rich, can I jump in on this for a second too?
Yeah.
So a couple things. First of all, in the chat box, our intention is this: you'll put the questions in there. As Rich is doing the presentation, I'll jump in, I'll read the chat and get it to Rich, and he can answer the question. Some we might hold off to others because we might be answering that question as Rich is doing his presentation. So you're aware of that. And I love about everyone. First of all, hello from all over the US. I'm seeing it. We've got people from Hawaii all the way down to Houston, Texas. So Rich, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background, who you are, and what is it that gives you the authority, if you will, to be able to present with everybody to everybody today, and why you're covering on the 5 steps of creating passive income.
Yeah, so Joe, it's a life cycle of being an investor and being engaged in real estate, really. So I've been a licensed real estate agent for 27 years. I currently live outside of Nashville, Tennessee, in a community called Clarksville, Tennessee. And in my 27 years of real estate, as a licensee, I had the mindset of knowing that I needed to engage with passive income. My dad was a builder and a developer, so I grew up in the trades, traveling on the ground, looking at where the roads are going to go and the lots and all that kind of stuff. So real estate's really part of my DNA. And I just recognized early on that I knew that I didn't want to work forever, and I wanted to have an aging plan, which included passive income. So I started in that journey intentionally 25 years ago, and started doing the traditional, buy a flip and make some cash. And I did that several times, and then moved into the multifamily units and buying some triplexes, and realizing after having, I think my first journey was 9 units, and I realized I either needed to have a lot or have none if I was going to be in a management role, because I did not want to deal with the tenants, and I wanted to be able to afford the talent to come in and serve the tenant population. So with that, I had a guy approach me as a client and asked if I wanted to be a partner. And according to the MREI, right, we're supposed to know our marketplace and have our criteria. And I had studied the market in Middle Tennessee, and this is back 98, 99, when there was a strong conversion to condos from apartments. And so we started identifying assets that we wanted to buy, and I was already familiar with them. So we started that, and I guess in that journey, I've owned over 700 doors, and currently I have 420 apartment units. I have 10 resort properties. We have 5 retail and office spaces. I own land and lots. And then currently right now, part of my big journey is around generosity. We're opening up 2 restaurants, a coffee shop, and a small event center. So I'd like to think that I'm an investor first and a real estate broker second. And my specialty's been inside of the commercial real estate industry for the last 25, 26 years. So that's a little bit about me. So the question is, who are you on the call, right? And what is your big why? What's fueling your big why? And what does that look like? Joe, I love the conversation around the BOLD laws. They're so impactful and simple. And the one that really gets my attention is the be, do, achieve. And it's written in a specific order. So what I want to do today is kind of give a 30,000 foot view of what is a passive income journey, and who do you have to be in order to do the right thing so that you can achieve that goal. And, we future pace in maps, right? So we want to identify what that goal is, the timeline that's there. And then we just simplify it and chunk it down into annual and then quarterly, right? We use a 4-1-1, and now we're implementing the 12-week year. So we can really look at what we have to do on a short-term daily activity that will give us those long-term results. And, the other thing, Joe, that I love is that this is a journey. And my journey started 25 years ago, intentionally buying income property. So my position on this journey is different than others on the call, because I started at a different time with a different focus. So what we want to do today is really just drill into what's your big why? What does that life look like? And as a realtor, we don't typically have an aging plan, right? I don't believe retirement is a biblical thing. I'm a man of faith, so I look at it as I'm supposed to use my life to the fullest extent of how I was created. So I just wanted to have a really strong aging plan, and that's what this journey is. How well will you age, and what does that look like, and at what time frame? So for some of us, we may have a longer life cycle that we're expecting to build this on. If it's 20, 25 years, some may be at 5. Joe and I are in conversation around the 10-year plan. And we want to give you the identifiers that help you identify structurally what that looks like. Joe, do you have the 3 triangles that we can pull up?
Sure can. Give me 1 second. I'll pull right up for you.
So, in the MREA and the MREI, I love the triangle diagram. And, in the MREA too, Gary has added the top tier, which is give. And, the challenge is, are you structured right now to where you could give $1 million a year away? And what would that look like from a structural standpoint? Well, you got to start with your mindset. So how are you thinking about money? Are you in relationship with money? Is it a healthy relationship?
Rich, can I just jump in for a second? When you say having a relationship with money, what does that look like?
Well, there's a lot of things to it. I think that the first thing that I would say is that, in MAPS, we use the Life by Design form.
Yeah.
And it's an intentional, simplified document that identifies, in order to have a business that's paying for itself and profitable, we can drill down in the economic model to say that's 7 transactions a month, or whatever that number is for you, to sustain our business, and how many units it will, require us to have the life that we have. And then the leftover is called margin. So the margin is really, profitability is a beautiful conversation, and I'm glad that Gary has initiated that conversation. The conversation beyond that is net worth and passive income. I know a lot of people that are worth $1 million but don't make any money. They have a house that's paid for, a piece of land. It's a non-income producing asset. So I don't like the conversation around what's your net worth. Are you a millionaire? My conversation is, what's your passive income? How are you earning off of things that you don't have to work for?
So you're saying the focus is, if you focus on the passive income, the net worth is going to automatically come out of that. And yet and what I'm hearing too is you talk about is, one is going to have it where it's a money that's going to work for you when you're out of bed, when you're in bed, or whatever it is, it's right, working for you all the time, where the other one is not.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So the relationship with the money is, you need to know what is required to sustain your lifestyle, which includes paying taxes, right? And, we identify that on that Life by Design form. And then I love the first part of the form, because it identifies margin. Like, what do you want? What is that big picture stuff? And, some people may put down, the annual, vacation, or the paying off of a student loan, or paying off a mortgage, a credit card, whatever that is. We have to have margin in order to get into a position to where our money begins to work for us. So there's your relationship with money. And, as a coaching client, and as a coach, we really identify heavily on P&Ls, right? So we have to know where the money is. We have a document that is supported based on tracking what we already did. And then we play red light, green light. We interrogate where we're spending the money, and we cut the expense, which creates margin, that creates that next level to where we can make investments for ourselves to age well.
So Rich, I know you're going to get more detail on that. Yet as we look at the triangle now, what is it that you want everyone to take away from this?
I guess if you think further out, right? So when we give $1 million, obviously the focus is not on ourselves. So the question is, who will you be, right? Be, do, achieve. Who will you be? And then what does that look like on your schedule? So what do you have to do so that you can achieve a goal of giving $1 million? What would that look like? And then structurally, who do you have to be in order for that to work well, so that you're not getting in trouble with the IRS and, an estate plan, probate in the event that you die without being with a will and it being in a trust, things like that. I want to raise everybody's thinking higher on, giving away $1 million. You have to think differently.
Love it. Thanks, Rich, for that.
So let's talk about the first slide is the first step to passive income is really a life plan. And I've combined this with a couple different applications. So the first thing is, do you have a last will and testament? What happens in the event of an untimely death or an illness that creates that, I guess, unfortunate event, right? Do you have life insurance? Do you have that for you, and do you have that for your family members or your significant others? Do you have a power of attorney? Same thing for your spouse or your significant other. Do you have a medical power of attorney? How about advanced directives? What happens when you can't make decisions for yourself and you're in a medical crisis? Do you have an education plan for your kids? That's part of life, right? We plan for having them and we want them to, obviously do better than we did. So do we have a plan in place before the tuition starts rolling in? So that's structurally, right? So we have to think, how are we going to be so that we can do the right things?
So on that, Rich, when you talk about the life plan, because you said, again, you had a 20-year plan that you laid out. Because I know the people, even the people on this call today, a lot of us have purchased property kind of randomly here and there. I was guilty of that 10 years ago, and think, well, I'm accumulating wealth, and yet there's a difference between what you're talking about and then what someone like I have been doing or other people have been doing. And what's the biggest thing you noticed?
I think it's the structure. It's how are you protecting yourself and that asset? So when you're buying things and and there's a lot of theories. So, my application and my process may not be the perfect one for everyone. I can say that when we started in our journey, we identified having separate LLCs for certain amounts of value in our portfolios. So we created an entity that had an operating agreement. It had its own liability insurance. It had its own umbrella insurance. So we created a way to protect it away from our personal, right? So when you're in business, just like in our life by design, we're doing an economic model with a budget to know what we have to do to pay our bills and fund our life at home. It's the same thing in your passive income. There's the you and there's not you. So you're an investor. How are you protecting your investment? And how is it providing a structure for future benefits? Yeah, so I can think of an example. So it's buying your first house and you have that renter in there. And if they slip and fall on the property or something happens and they file a lawsuit, who do they sue? The owner of the property. And that property happens to be in your personal name. Now you're defending a lawsuit against you personally, as opposed to having a corporation and a veil that is established through the corporation to where they have to go through that corporation, and that is a separate entity. So it's smarter to have the plan in advance so that you're not working backwards, and having to change deeds and your loans and all the other things.
So it's a check off list or wherever, if you will, that when you're planning this out, when you did your plan out, what you're saying is, before you even did your first purchases, you knew that at some point you were going to incorporate. And then it sounds, because you said companies are multiple corporations, so it sounds like you did more than one as you knew what you were growing into. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we've had 8 corporations, 8 LLCs that held different size of assets. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And we didn't want one to affect the other, and we didn't want any of them to affect our personal life, right? So we're working with a life by design, not by default, right? So that's the other, wonderful bold law for me is I like to be a planner and a thinker and a preparer. And, we're never going to have everything figured out ahead of time. However, when we're in that mode and that mindset, we're making decisions differently, and we're coming from curiosity. and we're asking people to help us that have been on that journey, a little bit ahead of us, or an expert in a field, so that we don't make those same mistakes.
Love that. Great.
So, do you have a corporation? I mentioned a trust. There's different types of trust. Do you have a trust set up so that you can avoid when you do pass away? Because right, the two guarantees in life are death and taxes. And in that journey, the government's going to get theirs. Well, you don't want to end up in probate. And the only way you can avoid probate is by having a trust. Do you have the knowledge around that? Are you asking those questions? That's part of the plan. What kind of trust? Who are you going to get the counsel from? Gary just started and announced his holding company. How big is your goal? I mean, I don't know what your income goal is 15 or 20 years from now. You need to have that clearly identified so that you're building the infrastructure to support it. You don't want to spend time going back in a circle and changing things along the way. So what does that look like? Do you need a holding company? Do you have the umbrella policies that protect you and your assets from an unfortunate circumstance? I've been through a couple of those, and the lawsuits were settled and I didn't even know there was filed because of an injury.
So Rich, I want to jump in because I think Sarah's question's right in line with where you're dealing with, right? We just said, and her question is this. Understanding that LLCs hold your investment properties, what is your recommendation for asset protection for your own primary residential property besides umbrella insurance?
You can have an opinion. I think for mine, I currently have it in my own name, and we're positioning it right now to be put into a trust so that it's an extra buffer of protection. But I would say that, and this is one of the things, because I planned, but I still didn't know everything and I'm still learning. So I would say any way that you can shield yourself from any potential liability, including in your home, or, you could title it to a spouse or a kid, or, into a trust, seek some legal advice. You should have a business attorney, a tax attorney, a CPA that understands investment portfolio investing, not just a tax preparer, but somebody that actually has their own money at risk in real estate, if that's, the venture that you choose to go for passive income.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Would you also recommend like a land trust for it too, or not?
Everybody's different, Joe. So,
okay.
It really gets into, I don't know where your destination is and how that fits in your overall portfolio. And there's a lot of pieces. So I would say, ask those questions of somebody that knows you in depth and helps you discover. Yeah.
Great. Anything else you want to address on the life plan before we go forward on that?
I think it's inside of your entity, right? You're going to have an operating agreement. The operating agreement is going to identify how you're supposed to run. And then you have meetings, and then you have minutes from those meetings, and you protect that corporate veil. So you can't just establish an LLC to hide from, whatever liability and then not behave like one. So you want to make sure you're getting good counsel around how you're actually establishing yourself as an entity. And then, my dad always says, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So, how are you actually structured? And then are you behaving that way, right? So be, do, and then you achieve. If it's an LLC, you need to know what that structure is and have the documents to support it, and then honor the terms of the agreement.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So, when we talked about having a business attorney, there's tax attorneys, there's, again, CPAs. You have to ask the question, are they intimate with the tax law, and do they move in the 99.5% of not paying the taxes, or do they live in that 0.5% around what you have to do to pay tax on your earned income? And ask them questions, go deep, ask them what they do. How would they protect their own earned income? And, and Tax-Free Wealth has a great qualifier in that book. It's a Kiyosaki book, and it identifies, really, it's a script around interviewing your CPA and finding out how they're in relationship with the passive income journey. Are they part of your support system, or are they just preparing your tax return? You want to know those things.
That's big. That's a big. I know you're going to jump into that more detail too, a little bit more in this presentation today. So. Yeah.
So, that's really around your life plan, right? So you have to have your personal affairs taken care of. And and there is no shame here. People are focused on earning the money, right? We get out there and we do what we have to do every single day, but we're not really putting all the time into having those plans in the event of an unfortunate circumstance. And, we had one here in my local community where it was a business owner and his wife were traveling down the road, and they were T-boned crossing an intersection, and they both died. And, it happens. So are you prepared for something like that? And they were a franchise owner and, in a different business. I don't know what the background story was, but I was like, oh my goodness, those kids, they had young kids. I hope they had that plan. So how do you become a student so you can help other people also prepare?
Love
Yeah.
it.
So the next slide, Joe, is I want to kick into number 2, which is, insulation and an income protection plan. And a lot of these things, and just identifying, there's going to be a cross-pollination of these things. And you need to be mindful. Insurance is, one of them. The other one is, separate bank accounts, right? How do we actually run our business and our household and our investment portfolio? We don't commingle escrow accounts in our business. So are we commingling our income from all areas of our life and just living off whatever that balance is when we're looking at our app on our phone? Or do we actually have a profit and loss statement through a tool like QuickBooks that tells us what the score of the game is based on what already happened, right? So that's the thing with the profit and loss. It can't change what happened because it's tracking your income and expense you've already had, but it allows you to look at what it is to change the future. So that's why, in coaching, we talk about red light, green light. Are you insulating yourself and protecting yourself in that environment by having separate bank accounts? Is it personal? Is it a capitalization account? Is it a business account? Do you have a reserve account? On a personal side, do you have a separate tax account, right? It's not money you can spend because it's already earmarked. So we have to change our thinking so that we can get into that mode of being able to give away money, right? Do you do your own accounting? Is it a gift or is it a task and a chore, and you walk in at the end of the year and you hand, or April 1st, and hand a shoebox to your CPA with all the receipts? How are you showing up? Hire a bookkeeper. The cost effectiveness of it's going to give you your time back, remove your stress, and allow you to focus on your top 20% of generating revenue and creating margin to buy your passive income. So, be about the books, be about the numbers, establish those reserves, have personal reserves, have business reserves, have your capitalization account, reserve account.
Hey, Rich, I want to ask you a question about that. You talked about the books. I know you have a list. Are you going to be able to provide that list, or how you want to have that with the group today?
Yeah, on my top book list. Yeah, we can share it at the end. Or we can also email it out at the end. I believe that they're going to have the ability to send that out.
Yeah, we'll address that at the end too, how Matt's can do that. Okay, great. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So reserves, what does that look like? How are we insulated? This year, COVID really gave us a wake up call, right? You get intimate with your money really quick when you don't know what's going to happen next month. And yes, some people had highs in their business and other people were struggling to survive and other people didn't. What does that look like? How deep are your bank accounts so that you can protect yourself, protect your business, right? Yourself, your family, and then your actual passive income properties.
So let's take that to a practical level. When you talk about your reserves, what do you, someone, let's just say who's starting now, and by the way, there's someone, if we could get them on mute, someone mute themselves, that would be great. So Rich, back to the reserve side, specifically about what would you recommend for someone coming into it? What would be your policy on that? And meanwhile, I'm going to go find the person who is making the noise like a
Russell is popping up here. If you can mute D, that would be great.
That's what I'm working on. Who is that, Russell? Okay, go ahead, Rich.
So reserves of any side is where you got to start, right? So the recommendation is 3 months would be a goal for every area as a minimum. I like reserves. So, I would work it from 3 to 6 and build them all. so that you have a plan around the survival, right? So we have to survive in order to thrive. And we want to build that insulation and protection around our income and for the unforeseen circumstances, right? We can control our reserves. We can't control the circumstances that always happen in the marketplace. We can plan for it. Yeah.
I like that. Great. What else, sir?
Around the insulation, the income protection, I mean, that's it. Let's be prepared, right? But this all goes back, the opening statement I made was we have to be in relationship with our money. This is a relationship with your money. I love how Gary phrases in the MREI, there's the consumer and then there's the investor. So if you look in the mirror and you're honest with ourselves, which are you? When you make more, do you spend more, or do you live on a budget and you give yourself an allocation and a draw off of your business earnings and stay in that budget mode and plan for the future? I love the delayed gratification, and it's that doing, right? So if you're being the right person, you're going to do the right things. So you're going to be mindful of that extra money, building your reserves, building your capitalization account so that you can purchase an asset that will give you that life by design in the future.
Awesome.
Yeah. So the next slide, Joe, it's around the capitalization and the financial plan. So I've already kind of teed this one up. The life by design form, again, is an amazingly wonderful, simple tool. Get into your business model. We have multi-year trend reports for a reason. Let's see where your buyer and your seller transactions are. What is your average fee? You can look at the life cycle. Where's your highs and lows on closings? And when do you write your contracts? When do you get your listings? You need to be intimate inside of how you're earning money so that you can plan to reserve it for that purchase. And then it's just having a profit and loss statement. You need to have one for your business and you need to have one for your personal life. And then as you add investment property, you should also have that as a separate bank account so you can run a P&L on that as well.
So Rich, what's important, because I know you mentioned this before in our coaching sessions, and that is you talk about having the separate accounts. Just share what's important, why you do that, and how do you look? One is why. Then number two is how do you look at both of those, meaning like when you're addressing them and looking at those P&Ls?
Well, so one, it's being a business owner. You don't go down to Walmart and think that the manager has all that cash running through his personal checking account. So why would it be different for you as a licensed realtor? You should have your business name or your team name. You can have a sole proprietor account at the bank and call it, Joe Bogar Real Estate. It's still under your name with a social security number, but that's where all of your revenues go into, and that's where you spend all the money to pay your bills to be in business. So it's important to be able to separate where your revenue and your expenses are for your business. And then, you separate it and you take a draw and you take it to your household bank account.
Yeah.
And then you pay your mortgage and your light bill and your food bill and all the other things related to being a person, your shoes that you buy and your personal taxes. So you want to do a draw and then you manage your personal accounts as well. So it's just smart to be able to separate the monies to know where they're coming from. We got the budget model. Why are we not using it? We can track the listings, the buyers. We know where the money, from tenants. We know where our money's coming from. Why would we not track it on where it's going? So, and it's the same thing on your passive income stream. If you have an LLC, you're going to have a separate tax return, for the state and for the federal government. So they're going to want to know, where did the income come from? If it just landed in your personal bank account, you're creating a nightmare for the future. Yeah, separate it. Pay your water bill, your lawn, your trash, your property taxes, all the things, the reoccurring expenses that happen in owning investment property, as well as the non-reoccurring things like your roof life expectancy. Do you have a reserve for the future? We know it's got 15 years left and the cost is X. You add inflation and you can plan on how much money you have to set aside for 15 years from now when that roof needs to be replaced. Don't start scrambling when you got water pouring in your kitchen. That's the plan part, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you want to be able to separate that and know what reserves you have set aside for your, for your property taxes, your insurance, and your replacement reserves on your income property.
So good. Again, reserves are, you're saying have reserves for how long?
Again, I would say if you don't have at least 3 months, then you're really not insulating yourself well. Um, and if you have personal reserves, how far does that carry you before you have to start funding your investment? You know,
And on your properties, how many months do you have for reserves for your personal and your business side?
I'm a little conservative, Joe. So on the personal side, I have 9 years of reserves.
I'm sorry, how long?
Not 9 years.
Okay.
And and then there's still other funds that can be accessible in the event that we run out. But then on my businesses, we got 5 years of reserves on our businesses.
So did you just automatically go there, or was there an intentionality to that? So how you built that up,
Yeah,
and why was that important?
Yeah, it's the plan, Joe. It's intentionality. Who am I being? And am I a business owner? Am I an investor? Or I'm a consumer? So from that mindset, what do I think about? Well, I'm thinking about the 20 to 30-year journey when I can start receiving that million so that I can then be in the position to give the million. And in order to do that, I have to protect the things that are providing that life by design. So it's a design. And we allocate on a monthly basis. We actually have the different things broken down for heating and air, for water heaters, for carpet, for roofs. And we allocate based on the asset, what that life expectancy is. And then we have a price per property, per door, how much we have to put back. So we pay the property first, then we pay our reserves for our taxes and our insurance. And then we look to see, how's our profitability on that income property. And then we determine, are we going to take a draw monthly, quarterly, annually? Are we going to hold back? Are we going to reinvest the cash flow to improve the property? And it's again, it's a plan. And I don't know, everybody has a different journey. It's just, how are you thinking about it so that you can have a plan that will support it, and it will get you into a position of 20 years where you don't have to work. The one diagram, Joe, that I love is page 91 of the MREI, where it has the exchange of the active income to the passive income. And I like it because it does the 25% incremental changes. So when you're 100% below the line active and 0 in that same year for, the passive income, then it changes where 75% of your earnings come from active and 25% from your passive. And it shifts over to where eventually you're 100% passive income and you don't have to work anymore. That's freedom. That's wealth.
So Rich, I think that's such a big thing you're just emphasizing right now on page 91 out of the MREI, is that, so one is consumption, one is where you're consuming, the other one's where you're working as an investor on that diagram that Gary put together, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So your point is to take it from being that consumer to go at least the first 25% and jump up and start becoming now an investor with that money by doing that. Is that correct?
Yeah. And that's a really great diagram, because what you can do with that is, if you're on a 5-year journey or a 10-year journey, you can use that 25% shift over the number of months, right? So 5 years is only 60 months. That's not long. I used to have hair like 60 months ago. I like to believe that. It didn't take long, So what are we doing to plan for it? And again, you can't think 10 years from now you want to have $5,000 a month and don't start for 7 years, right? It's not going to work that way. And you're not creating an income stream, you're creating a passive income stream. So the money that you make off of that investment doesn't go into your personal bank account. It doesn't buy new shoes and a new car. You put it back into a reserve account for the next purchase, or deeper reserves on that property, and you use it as a tool to build that passive income. It's time on task over time, Joe. So it's that 20-year journey.
Right.
My principal balance on my loans today are lower than they were when I started. Well, the value is also higher than when I first bought them, and my rent rate per month is also higher than when I first bought them. Yeah. So if I just keep going in and refinancing and pulling, maximum out that they'll allow me to value, you're not going to start living through that life by design and having passive income. There's going to be a turn in the market. You don't have reserves. there's your opportunities that other people that have cash are going to buy, and they're going to buy them at a discount.
So Rich, I want to go back to, we first talked about a life plan, which you can see on the slide deck I'll go back to. And then we talked about the next part, which is insulating and an income protection plan. And then the next one we go to is we also have now what you had, which is capitalization and financial plan. Is there anything else that you want to cover on that you would want them to take away as you gone into the 30,000 foot view as you've been sharing today?
I think it is having the plan and then funding the plan, right? So is that, a percentage of every closing that's a profit that goes into your capitalization account? Do you do that weekly, monthly, quarterly? How are we actually creating margins so that we can fund it? You have to have a plan. And one of the books that I love is Automatic Millionaire. And it's, reducing that from your earnings without ever touching it. So you have an automatic internal bank transfer that goes into it. You don't have to remember, because if you have to do it yourself, the percentages are not in your favor. You're not going to do that and create the behavior. So that's a beautiful thing with online banking. You can set that up with an indefinite date and fund it automatically.
I love that.
Pull it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the fourth step for passive income is really, it's your support plan and your personal growth plan. Again, who are we being and who are we bringing with us? Who is our support system? Do you have an estate planner? Do you have a wealth advisor? Do you have a coach? Do you have just one? Why would you not have more? I have multiple, because everybody has different focuses. And I'm okay to pay for somebody else's expertise so that it saves me money in the long run. So what is your growth plan? We talk about growth plan, and Bold emphasizes a growth plan, and coaches are pushing your growth plan. Who are you being? What are you doing to become what you want to be? And what does that include? How are you investing in yourself? What's your reading list? Do you read a book once, or do you read it, 10 times?
Let me ask you, like, for the books, what books have you read this year, and how many times did you read whatever book that was?
So I have read 48 books this year, and I'm working through 3 right now. So I'm hoping to have these 3 finished by the end of tomorrow. It's a new year. And can I share an embarrassing moment?
Go for it.
So I've had the MREI on my bookshelf for years. In fact, multiple copies, and had never read it, right? My limited belief was, I am an investor. I've already got this. I don't need to read the book. I'm doing it. And then last year we received the MREI from MAPS as a Christmas present to the coaches. And that was when you had encouraged me to send an email to Gary Keller. And the conversation was around the top 5 wealth determiners in our lives. So I structured the email, and, I'm a high D, high C. So I delete it and I rewrite it, and I do that multiple times. And I send that email out to him. I board a plane with that book, and I read the first 10 sections and realize that I would have never asked that question had I read the book. And he agreed with that, and I owned it. And I owned it. And through that conviction, in the first quarter of this year, I went through the book 19 times, and that was both reading it and Audible. And still feel like I don't have it mastered. So it's around self-mastery. Who do I want to be? I want to be the guy that makes fewer mistakes to have a bigger life. And it's a life by choice, and it's by design with a plan. So what's your growth plan? Most of the books, when I latch into one, it's a minimum of 3 times through. And I read scripture that way too. Proverbs is a book that I read for the wisdom of life. And I read it like a calendar. So, today is the 29th. I read the 29th chapter, and I'm not a real smart study. So I have to read it more than one time to really understand the context. And then I'll read it that 3rd time through to see what I can do today to make a change. And then if you want to go deeper, you journal it, right? So are you journaling the books you read?
So Rich, a couple things, because I've noticed pop up in the chat box a little bit. A couple of it is about what's the MREA, MREI. So I'll help out. The MREA is a book, Gary, they call the Red Book we use at Keller Williams, because we got new people here who joined us in KW. And that's the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And when that diagram that Rich was sharing with you, when Gary did the MREI, which is the Millionaire Real Estate Investor, it's that book took the same diagram, which is when you say think a million, earn a million, net a million, receive a million, and then the last one was give a million. And that just came out a few years ago. So that's where that diagram comes from. So thanks, Rich. I just wanted to get into that part. So you said you've read the MREA how many times? MREI how many times?
Well, MREI, I've been through it with Audible 19 times.
19 times this year.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Either you're a really slow learner who's made a lot of money, or you're actually just, there's another reason. And what is that?
It's called self-mastery, Joe. I don't know what I don't know. And the repetitive things in investing in yourself, you hear things when you listen more. So it's the process of listening and then the digesting and the processing. And it's the same thing for scripture. I learn something new every time I go through that. And, I was blessed as a teenager to have somebody teach me how to read Proverbs like the calendar. And I'm not a teenager anymore. So, over the decades of reading that, I'm learning something every single day. So it's being, it's the B so that I can do the right things and therefore achieve the results of what I choose to put on my calendar. It's not about selling real estate. It's not about having the best lead generation system. It's about sticking to a schedule and putting the right things on your schedule every day.
And so, Rich, when do you put the personal growth plan? When do you actually put that in? When are you working on that, or do you just make it up as time goes on, or how do you plan that out?
So my growth plan is really September is when I'm processing what I want to do for the next year, because I have to have my budget in place. I want to make sure that I have the money to support that and that it sticks to the budget model. So September, I start identifying what are those events that I want to invest in, what are those courses that I want to take, and then I start building my book list. And honestly, the book list it just keeps growing every single day, because I'm listening to a lot of other things. I do different podcasts. I listen to different, Minute with Maxwell. John Maxwell's got incredible things out there on leadership and just life. Darren Hardy, Compound Effect. He's got a great thing. I listen to Tony Evans. He's got sermons online, and John MacArthur, just different people that bring different perspective. And, it shows up on my schedule. I have my time blocked to do those activities.
I love that. And by the way, I saw several comments about the reading part. There's a lot of us might know a guy named Ben Kinney, and I remember this out of Gary's mastermind that I was in. And Ben talked about, like, one of the things he did is he listens to Audible at a 3 times. I do it at a 2 times level with the book. So you have that deeper depth when you're memorizing it and you're reading things out of the book. And I've been doing that method for the last several years and love that. Yeah. Just a quick little tip about how you can go through a book rapidly and how to absorb quickly in your brain too.
Yeah. Yep. It helps with focus too for me. That eliminates the other distractions.
It sure does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Rich, anything else we want to address on the personal growth now that we have that part down?
It's like anything else, Joe. You have to be intentional, and you have to have a plan, and you have to have accountability. Who's holding you accountable? Are you allowing yourself to be trusting of others and be authentic and real about where you are in this journey? There's no judgment. There's no condemnation. We're all doing this together. So who do you surround yourself with, and are they about growth? So if you have other people that you spend lots of time with and they're not growth minded and they don't come from gratitude with a generous spirit, you might want to change who you're hanging out with. Yeah. So the next one, which I love, is this charitable giving. That's my big why, Joe. I mean, that's what this life has been all about. And for 20 years, I've had a big why around supporting intentional people that are choosing to have a lifestyle of giving to others that doesn't produce a lot of money.
So, Rich, I know because you talked about this is actually when you said you did your 20-year plan, and we talked about this before, was you came with the mindset of what could I give first as you were building everything out. Why was that important? I know Mo Anderson talks a lot about this, and I had the privilege of spending time with Mo, and I know that that's her heart. What is it about for you that resonates that way?
I've received a lot, right? In an undeserving manner, I've had other people invest in my life that changed the course of my life. And I want to be able to do that for other people, and to do it from the back. I don't want to be out front. I want to see a need, and I want to be able to execute meeting that need. everything is derived from time, treasures, and talents. So where are you at in the area of giving? It doesn't have to just be the monetary piece of money. However, money does help. So I want to come in and I want to give of my talents. I want to give of my time. And intentionally, I feel like I have been told very clearly that I'm supposed to give monetarily at a high level.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it starts with other people that have invested in me, and it had a huge life impact. And those people are still in my life. And, it's not just around how do you be a better businessman? It's about how do you be a better person? And how are you showing up on a personal level? And that person of integrity is what you do when no one else is watching. And then, who can you be real with when you're not doing your best?
So, Rich, one of the things we talked about earlier, and I don't know if you want to address that or not, and Gary talks about this in the one thing about the 7 circles, and I know you have addressed this prior to. Do you want to go to that at all today with the group, or you want to have that something for them to consider on page 119?
Well, I think that, it's a great diagram, and I love the way that it's designed. When you look at it, so I got some wisdom. Tony DeSillo shared with me that, that there's the 3 circles on the right are personal, and the 3 circles on the left are business. And the spiritual life really is the one that's more of an umbrella, and it encompasses all of those. And it should. If it's not, then I would challenge you to think about that at a different level. Essentially, it's having a plan for each one of these. And do you have a GPS? How big are you thinking about your physical health, right? It's the only body you got. What are you doing to invest in it? I can tell you all the things I know I'm not doing, and I can tell you what I'm doing to change that, right? Same thing with key relationships. It's important to do the key relationships and your personal life. What is your personal growth plan? What does that look like? How are you building into your family members, your significant others? And are you intentional, purposeful? And does it show up on your schedule? Do you protect that time? When you're there, this is the one thing that I had learned the hardest way, Joe, was wherever I wasn't there. I was on my phone. I was doing deals, going to the beach. God provided us these great opportunities for resort properties. But when I was there, I was working. And, I've got accountability about when I get there, I'm really going to be there. I'm turning the phone off. I'm staying out of the emails. And if I have to do, life still evolves. So, maybe that's at 2-3 o'clock in the morning when I'm responding to emails where it's not impacting the relationships I'm supposed to be building memories with. Same thing for job. How are you showing up in the morning? Do you have a schedule? Are you there by 8? Have you done your gratitude? Did you do your journaling? Are you ready to engage? Have you done your scripts practice and role play so that you then can go out and do your appointments and get your listings and negotiate contracts, right? It's not difficult. You just have to be intentional around it.
So, Rich, as we wrap up, and I want to open this up to our group, and you please go ahead and put your questions you would like in the chat box, and I will ask Rich for those. I'll give him the questions. And I wanted to start off with one earlier, and this was directly towards, I know it was for investment property. Here it is from Juan, and his question was, we typically use, Chase Craig was responding to this, but yet here was the question he asked. He said, bear with me here. I'm going to go up to Juan's question. And it was about asking about 5%, 5% on monthly rent income if it fits the property, or is it 10% if it's older? And that's how much money you're putting away for reserves on your investment properties. What's the philosophy that you see that works?
Well, it's a asset specific calculation. So older is relative, right? So the house could be 30 years old, but the roof is 10 years old. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to reserve the roof based on its cost. If it has a 30-year life expectancy, I'm going to figure out how much is left. And then I'm going to figure out what that today's cost is. And then I'm going to add inflation to determine what would that really cost me at that, 10 or 15 years in the future. And then I'm going to just do simple division to say, how many years, how many months, and then put that money aside every month. So same thing with your water heater. What is your expected life expectancy on a water heater? Is it 5 or 7 years? How old is it? Same thing with your heating and air. Yeah.
So with 400 plus properties and then obviously shopping strip centers, I'm assuming you have somehow where you track all this on a way that, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we do inventories. I'm tracking. We've got programs that identify, where we're putting money above or below the line. So the easiest way to separate this is you have reoccurring expenses, which are above the line. I know I'm going to have a trash bill and I'm going to have lawn care and, all of the, taxes, insurance, all that's going to happen regardless. But then I have a below the line expense that does not reoccur every single year on that address. So I want to know on a month by month basis, what am I spending on those non-reoccurring expenses? And, we're servants to the lender and they want to know, how are you protecting their risk? So my bookkeeping is real detailed, Joe, and I've had more arguments with CPAs that they want to do it for a tax filing in the past, not my current one. And I've told them, look, you're working for me and I want to know where my money's going. So those detailed memos with, classifying it by the address is important to me. I want to know where my money's going. And then how many of those am I doing a year? Now I take actuals and I can project my next year based on, if I've got an 83 unit apartment complex and I'm doing 3% of the units on HVAC every year, and I can see that it's trended that way for 3 years, I know how to budget for that. It's not a mystery and oh my gosh, we didn't make enough money. No, we're planned.
Okay, so another question, Leah asked the question is, how do you apply for a mortgage when you're an LLC?
So, an LLC, it's just a different type of borrowing. So you're not a consumer, you're a business. So you're going to go to the commercial lending side of the bank and they will apply based on who you are. They call it, they're going to look at your contingent liabilities as a person. What do you owe for personal debt? What do you owe for business debt? What is your margin? So we do, are you 30%, of your income tied to debt? They're going to look at that and then they're going to look and see, what is the property going to cost to maintain? And, most banks are doing 125% of the coverage ratio is what it's called. So you go to the commercial lending side of the bank and you say, hey, in fact, I would start those relationships now. Again, in the Millionaire Real Estate Investor book, that diagram is CTN. It's the criteria, it's the terms in your network. You need to know your network. Who's your lender? What are they going to offer you on a loan? Is it an 80% loan to value? Is it a 75%? If you pay cash, how long will they make you, it's called seasoning. And I know I probably jumped in the weeds on that one, but essentially you need to get in a relationship with commercial lenders and then always ask them, what does a bank love right now? Because it changes based on risk. So if they loved multifamily last month, they may not love it in February when you're ready. So you have to have multiple people that will give you that money and ask them, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm doing. What do I need to do to be prepared to come into your office and execute an approved underwriting for a 3-unit apartment complex or a single family? So build your network, understand the terms, which, they don't have, 30-year amortizations on stuff unless you go into the government-backed securities. So, yeah, get into relationship with a commercial lender.
Great. So Rich, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop and pause before we ask the next question. Just let's fill in. So first of all, we wanted to let you know that this is being recorded. And yes, it will be going out. Matt's will be sending that out, plus all the other programs that were, the other 14 programs that were offered during the holidays. Rich, do you want to comment on this last part too for any other information for MAPS coaching?
Yeah, again, I've always had a coach in my life, at least one, and a mentor. If you're not in that coaching relationship, it will grow your business because it's going to challenge and grow you, and you're going to have somebody tell you something or listen to you differently that's going to save you time, and time is money. So, you may want to look at more than one coach. If you're in a team and you have a director of operations or you have, a buyer's agent, how do you invest in your team? That's an intentional thing as well for a plan. Yeah. And then in the future, we're going to be offering some passive income group coaching. So I know that we've got an email that you can email, and then also you will be receiving something from MAPS as you are registered for this course and this call today, that they'll be sending out information for, first quarter, second quarter. We're going to put together a plan around offering more on the passive income side.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Rich, for sharing that. For the rest of you, feel free to stay on. I'm going to I'll have Rich answer some other questions that we have here in the group. And then Thank you so much. So Rich, the next question we have is back to, okay, thanks for more of that. The cap rate, what's the cap rate you demand when you're looking at rentals? So what is the cap rate you look for? Are you looking at cap rate? Are you looking cash on cash? Are you looking at IRR? What is it that you're looking at, Rich?
So it's all of that, right? So everybody has a different button that needs to be pushed, and everybody has a different desire. So location, I mean, I'm always starting with location. And then I like to have the history of the property, and I like to find properties that have been mismanaged and underperforming. So I'm always looking for a value add, and I have no problem with paying full price if the current numbers justify it. And then I look at what I can do to improve it over what time and what kind of cash injection. So I'm looking for a cash on cash. Cap rates, we know what the industry's doing, but I don't get hung up on a cap rate. I really want to get into the history. And if they don't have, most investors are not very well organized in their bookkeeping. So I ask for the tax returns on that property so that I can look and see what they've been claiming.
Right.
And then I use that as a due diligence item. So it really gets down to the property and what do I see it as? I mean, there may be some properties that are an opportunity zone and I'm buying it for a tax advantage and not necessarily a cash flow. So it really depends on who you are and what you want to accomplish and what your timeline is. And it may be in one of those redevelopment areas that you're really looking at the 5-year benefit based on the redevelopment. It really, it's a hard one to answer, Joe. I look at a lot of things. I look at all of it, but then it really gets down to, does it fit my plan? Does it fit in the short-term or long-term plan?
Yep.
And does it give me what I want today so that it, matches that need for the future? So it's not really an answer, but everybody's got their own temperature.
What you're saying is you got to look at basically what fits for them, because they might be why they're focusing on a cash on cash might be different than someone who's looking at just a cap rate. So it's
Right.
going to be based upon what the reason is why. Why is that important for you? It's what I basically heard you say. Get clear about.
Yeah. Why is the cap rate important to you? And then what will the lender support? And then does that cap rate give you the cash on cash return today? And does it provide you, another one might be you're buying a larger piece of property to get a bigger depreciation schedule so that you're protecting your earned income. So again, everybody has a different need around it. And that's what I love about commercial real estate is you have to get into relationship with your money. You have to have the plan for the future to receive the passive, and you have to have a tax plan with a tax attorney or a business attorney that's going to help you with that structure to get you where you are going.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. By the way, Chase Craig, 100% agree with you. He said, As Much as You Can Afford, The Richest Man in Babylon is a great book and has some great systems and models. I know, Rich, you and I have talked about that. And also, The Simple Path, Gary Keller had us read a book this year out of his mastermind, which is The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. Another great one to look at when it comes to how you want to look at your money. He calls it the FU money. And it's about how to live a simple life. And how do you take that money and invest it so that you can do that?
Yeah.
Let's see here, Rich. What else we have? I thought we had one. Oh yeah. When do we actually get to spend the fun money and reward ourselves? Like wanting to buy a fun car and yet depreciation makes me cringe. That was from, I don't want to butcher Mr. Lopez. I apologize. I don't want to get the first name wrong.
Joe, it's all about the life by design. It's a plan, so if you want to reward yourself, have a plan for it and make sure that it fits with everything else instead of a spontaneous thing. And then, the other thing my dad told me is if you want something really bad, save your money, pay cash and sleep on it and see if you still want it tomorrow,
Yep.
So yeah, you still have to have fun, but you build that into your plan. And if a car is that thing for you, then have a plan around it, support it financially.
Love that. Awesome. Let's see here. Do you look at the Schedule E of the return?
Absolutely. That's the one that I go to is a Schedule E.
There you go. Thank you, Susan, for that question. Then let's see. Please list 5 must-dos as due diligence for real estate investor and 10 ideas to do's. I'm not sure. Go ahead, Rich.
So 5 ideas for, say that again.
Yeah. So we have 10 please list the 5 must-dos as due diligence for a real estate investor. What are the 5 must-dos? There we go. 5 must-dos as a real estate investor. What would you say are the 5 must-dos they must look at?
Well, again, it starts with your why. So you have to know what you're trying to accomplish. So be clear on that. And then, do you love that type of real estate? If you don't love that piece of real estate and you're just trying to fit a deal in to accomplish a 5-year goal, you could get in trouble by buying the wrong piece of property. So understand your criteria. So I just go back to the millionaire real estate investor, know your criteria, understand your terms, and have your network to support it. And then you have to validate the income stream.
Yeah.
You have to validate what they're reporting for expenses, right? And then you have to have a plan for improving the return. So are you going to have to put cash into it to improve the property? And then can you increase the rent to justify that cost? So it's knowing the location, it's knowing the numbers, and then having a plan around that.
Location, numbers, and plan. Be clear about that.
Criteria, terms, and network. Criteria. How do you have your support system around you before you go out and just sign a contract?
Great.
Yeah.
Great. And I think we have a question, but I'm not clear about this from Samuel about please fill blank, be, do, achieve. It was with a question mark. And that's correct. If that's a question of be, do, achieve, that's from our bold laws, Samuel. And basically, as Rich shared earlier, it's first we begin with how we're being and ourselves, and then it allows us to be able to go accomplish the things you're going to do to achieve the things you want in your life.
Yeah.
So, Rich, I want to say thank you so much. We appreciate everyone here on the call today. Thank you so much for your time. And Rich, anything else you want to say of parting words?
I'm just excited that you guys are engaged in this call today, and want to just challenge you. Just take one thing. And again, 30,000 foot view, there's a lot of details to it. So what is it that you can grab today, a golden nugget, if you will, that you will actually do something with it? Go back, listen to the recording. You're going to be given the recording, and drill it down into one application, and then discover that with your coach, and then start doing the plan for that. And
love that.
The journey is there. And again, it's time on task over time. You're not going to become a person receiving $100,000 in 12 months unless you have a plan and the funds to be able to execute. You can do it. You just have to have a plan to accomplish that. So be the person, do the right things, and then you will achieve what your goals are.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Rich, thank you so much, everybody. I want to say thank you again. Have a great day. And we will see you all coming in, hopefully, for family reunion for everybody.
That's right. Appreciate y'all.